The Lord will with you.
With your spirit.
A reading Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you.
Jesus said for the Pharisees, where were rich men who dressed a purple garment and fine linen, and dined sumptuously each day? And lying at this door was a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who would gladly have eaten his fill of the scraps that fell from the rich man's table. Dogs even used to come and lick his sore. When he said the poor man died, he was carried away angels to bosom of Abraham. The rich man who died and was buried, and from the netherworld where he was in torment, he raised his eyes and saw Abraham far off, and Lazarus at his side. And he cried out, Father Abraham, have pity on me, and send the Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am suffering torment in this flame. Abraham replied, my child, remember that you received that was good during your lifetime, while Lazarus likewise received what was bad. But now he is comforted here, whereas your torment, moreover, between us and you great chasm established, to prevent anyone from the crossing who might wish to go from our side, from your side to ours. He said, then I beg you, Father, send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, so that he may warn them, lest they to come to this place of torment. But Abraham replied, they have more and the prophets, let them listen to them. And he said, oh no, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes them, they will repent. Then Abraham said, if they will not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded if someone should rise from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So a couple of years ago, I was making a sick call. And it was a sick call. I'd never been to this part of town before, and I set my GPS up, and it was taking me over towards the hospital, towards UT Hospital. I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird. And there's an address. It wasn't like at the hospital, but then the GPS got me there, and it was an interesting place. Let's just say that. And I'd never been there before, and I would offer to say that probably most of you have not been there either. So I'm trying to find this guy, and I still hold a special place in my heart for the person who did not give me the apartment number where this guy lived. They just gave me the building number. So I'm like, all right, good Lord, this is the place where you're going to have to watch over me, and so get me to where I need to be, with, as I like to say, to there with and without any incident. And so I get out of the car. Of course, I got my clerics on. It's 10 o'clock, so it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and so there's a bunch of folks sitting out on the front porch, and He had really large cans of beer. I didn't really think I'd ever seen them this big before. And they started yelling at me, and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm looking for so-and-so." And this one guy kept going, "The Son of God is here. It's the Son of God." And I'm like, "Oh, man, just relax. Let's just not go this far. I'm just trying to do my job. Son of Man, maybe." But he kept going, "Son of God's here." And he was also imbibing in some other stuff. He goes, "I'm going to drink and I'm going to smoke till I die." And I'm like, "Go for it, brother." And so they finally, they knew the guy I was looking for. They found me. We went and got him. Everything came back. And I just thought that was, every time I hear this Son of Man reference, it makes me think of that, because we hear people talk referred to as the Son of Man in the Old Testament. So Peter, when he's explaining to Timothy what he is, he's like, "You are a Son of Man." And that's not just one of us, right? Being the Son of Man is something that means you got spiritual street cred, right? You know what you're doing. You're respected. You are a righteous person. So it's not quite the Son of God, but they're calling you, righteous, holy person. So he's explaining to Timothy what he needs to do in order to keep this community together. Basically, he has to be the leader. And by being that leader, these are the things you're supposed to do. All right, so this is wedged in between, this is a Son of God, Son of Man sandwich, with the Son of Man, Son of God, Son of Man on the inside, and then not sons of men on the other side. In the first reading, we hear about people lounging on their couches, drinking wine. Anybody partake in any lounging on their couches yesterday? Yeah, doing a little lounging on your couches, in your lounge chair, drinking some beer and watching some football. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the Southern way. Does that make us sons of men? Did we miss out on something yesterday? Could we have done something better? To ask this in the SEC, I will get letters and I will love them. And then, so with this one, they're basically, the prophet is telling them, the way you are acting, God is not pleased with, and He's going to take something very important away from you, your freedom. And that's what happens down the road, because these people were so complacent and were so turning away from the things of God and towards the things of man, that eventually, that's when they became overrun by the Assyrians, and the Assyrians put them into slavery, or at the least colonized them and put them in exile. Now, on the other end, we got the rich guy, clothed in purple, sumptuous clothing, and had sumptuous meals. He didn't do anything horrible, right? Jesus would, if it's in a parable, he would kind of tell us what type of person the person is. He doesn't say anything about this guy other than he ate and lived and dined well and sumptuously. And what did he do? He walked back and forth and passed this man every day and didn't look, didn't care, didn't bother to give him, to say anything to him, or even give him the scraps off of his table. He pretended like he did not exist. He pretended like he was not there. He was not even a human being. This is not the activity of a Son of Man. He was not a drug dealer. He was not he wasn't on a terrorist watch list. He wasn't trafficking children. He wasn't selling drugs or doing anything that Jesus would point out that he was a bad person. He just didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. This should scare the living daylights out of everybody in this room. There might be a couple of saints in here. Scares me to death. I tell you who I've been really scared. Have you been watching, and I probably haven't, Ken Burns' documentary about how the United States and other countries reacted about the Holocaust? There was a huge boat a ship of Jews that were coming on their way from some Eastern European country, Western European country, I can't remember which one, and they had been made promise of passage from there first to Cuba and then on to the United States. And what they found out is they had been scammed. The whole boat, the whole thing was rigged. They got them on there, and then when they get to Cuba, only 4 people out of about 800 to 1,000 were allowed into the country. And they circled around and around. They came to Miami. We told them to go away. They came to New York. We told them to go away. Sent them to France. France told them to go away. And I think they ended up, finally they ended up getting, they got asylum somewhere. But think about, and that there was a pattern of that all during that time. By not doing something, we can cause more damage than by doing something. These sins of omission that we don't even realize that we do half the time make a mark. And it's not a good mark. And we hear that the rich man is saying, he's pleading, I didn't know. Nobody told me. Nobody told me. And God's going, we told you. Moses told you. The prophets told you. The prophet he was talking about was one of the ones that they would have heard about from the first reading. We know that these things are going on around us. And we choose to look the other way, to drive past, or to think somebody else will do it. There was this thing this guy started a long time ago. You guys know it. There used to be, we used to hear of random acts of what's it called, violence, and then to try and counter that, this one guy started calling these things called random acts of kindness. And it got on Oprah, and it was a big deal. People started doing it. You get in line if you're ever lucky at Chick-fil-A and somebody bought your Chick-fil-A. Never happens to me. I'm always the jerk that ends up being the 20th one in the line. I'm like, wait a minute, how many? So, but just things like that. And even just looking for opportunities when we can not just be part of the status flow or the status quo and just go along to get along. There are little things that we can do just by making an effort that can make huge changes in somebody's life. Right? Just that son of man, the guy who told me that, he was probably whacked out of his mind, but I'll always have a homily from it, and it'll be the first and last time probably anybody's ever going to call me a son of man. So it was just something that was so random. He didn't know that he was even being randomly kind. But think about what you can do if you try and be randomly kind. Think about what it will look like if we actually make an effort to be kind and not to ignore and not to downgrade and not to push down and not to cast down and look at people like we are better than them. I mean, we've all had people who, in this room, there's somebody in here. There are tons of people who think that they're better than we are, and we think that we're better than some others. But there's always a bigger fish out there, and you got to remember, until it happens to you, until you are disenfranchised or looked down upon, right? Think about us as Catholics, and we came over here not in a happy place. People didn't want us coming over. People did not want the Catholics coming to the United States. They drew horrible cartoons of us, and I've told about it before. And during schools, in just regular schools, the way that they taught the Catholics their ABCs, the A was the aberration of the horror of Rome, or something like that. And then they thought that of course, why would we be coming here? Well, we wanted some sort of, we're coming from Ireland because we're dying, because we can't eat. But what were we coming here to do? Same old thing, coming to steal our jobs, right? Everybody that is in this room has come from somewhere else, unless you were part of the original Mayflower. And you still were trying to get away from somebody who didn't like you. So let's remember that to ignore the things that are going on around us, both right here, locally, and also globally, doesn't make it right. Do we want to end up being the rich man who dined and laughed and had a great time, Or do we want to be the one who actually does the work of a Son of Man and lives up to the reputation of the Son of God?